We're getting everything. Hi, everyone. Welcome today. Happy month of the military child. Today in Illinois, it's Purple Up Day. We're getting all set up. There we go. We're good. Um, and so just give us a few minutes, making sure everybody is in. I hope you're having a great day. Um, oh, hi, Logan. Fantastic. All right. So I think that, are you letting people in, Meryl? Okay. Awesome. And you just let me know when we're ready to go. Are we ready to go?
Hey there.
Hi, Hughes. Good morning.
I hope it is.
Awesome.
Look at all those smiling faces. Love your background.
So, okay, we are going to get started because I am very excited about today. We have a really great panel discussion happening with some military children that are going to share their experiences. So Foundations Conversation, where kids rank. And we are a program for military children, but we felt that it was really important to start having discussions and conversations around how we best support our military kids as they transition in and out of communities. So this series really has been a wonderful exploration into different areas. So we talked about education, we talked about caregivers, and being Month of the Military Child, we wanted to actually talk to some military children. And we're not just talking to military kids that are military kids now, but we're going to talk to military kids that are now grown-ups. So from Vietnam era through current, we're going to get a chance to meet and learn about some of their experiences and hear some of their stories. So because they have so much to share, I am not going to belabor my initial beginning part, and I want to turn it over to first Erica Bauer, who is the Director of Community Programs. Is that what the
Community Relations.
Community Relations for the Chicago Bulls. And so I'm so excited to have Erica join us because not only is she in that role with the Bulls, she herself is a military child. So I felt like, you know, I am the parent of military children, but it probably would be better to have someone who has lived the life as a military child to lead this conversation. So Erica, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm so excited to be like a spectator for this session.
Yay, so I'm so happy to be here. I'm so thrilled. Who knew there was a month of a military child? I don't know when that began, but I'm so glad to be a part of today and excited to share our stories and our experiences. So I got a chance to meet our excellent panelists yesterday. And so we're going to kick off with some warm-ups. So I'm going to have each person introduce themselves. Then we're going to do a little decoding warm-up, just for really, it's an in-house for us military brats, as they say. And then we're going to really hone in today on a few specific topic areas. I think it's really important, first and foremost, to illuminate our experiences. All of us have the experience of growing up, but I think what makes us distinct are the ways in which we grow up. And for us military dependents, us military children, our experiences are unique. So we want to share a little bit about our experiences, the uniqueness that we associate with these experiences, some of the challenges about how we grew up, and why something like Kids Rank is instrumental to helping us to continue on and to thrive in our communities. And so without further ado, yes, I'm Erica Bauer, Director of Community Relations for the Chicago Bulls. If you watched last night's game, I didn't have a chance to draw up some additional plays. And so for that, I am sorry. It's tough loss. But next time we're still hoping for the playoffs. I know, Jason, I know Hughes, I know. But I want each panelist to introduce themselves. But before that, I want to just familiarize you with their names, as I will be calling on their names multiple times throughout the day. So with us today, we have Shelly. Hello, Shelly. Jason, Naomi, and Logan. And so what I'm going to ask of each of you, and I'm going to begin with Shelly, what I'm going to ask of each of you are to say the following, and I'll prompt you if you forget what they are, but they'll be in this order. First, your first and last name. Notice I stuck to your first name because I didn't get, I'm not sure how to pronounce everyone's last name, so I'll let you do it for us. Secondly, the branch of service. And typically when we say this, the assumption is we're talking about, for all of us, it's our fathers. We're talking about who was in the military, but as we all know, and as you all will learn for the civilians in the room, we are all signing up to serve because we are all moving around the country and as a family unit. And so would like you to share the branch of service that you are a part of, the kind of bases you grew up on, really. How many times you moved. Now, I believe we have one double-digit person, but this is unique. This is one of the unique realities for military students or military kids, right? And military dependents is that oftentimes when we meet each other, we want to know how many times did you move? What bases were you stationed at, right? And so name, first and last name, branch of service, how many times you moved, and finally, the favorite place you were stationed, right? And so for that, to decode that, that's military base. So where's the location of the favorite base where you were stationed? So Shelly, we're gonna start with you, then we're gonna go to Jason, Logan, and Naomi. I only picked that order this time because that's how you show up on my screen. I will be mixing it up throughout. So Shelly, without further ado, take it away.
Thank you, Erica. My name is Shelly Sproul, and my dad was Army infantry. We moved total of 14 times in my 12 years that I was a military kid. And my favorite assignment was Hawaii. He was stationed at Schofield Barracks, Wolfhounds.
My name is Jason McKee. My father was in the Air Force, and we moved a total of 6 times. And my favorite base that we were stationed at was Menwith Hill in England.
My name is Logan Brown. My dad was started in the Marines and is now Navy. We've moved a total of 9 times. So far, I'm pretty sure it's pretty much coming to an end at this point. And my favorite place is probably Illinois. I've been there a few times back and forth, but it's really close to home, and we did actually go to a few of the Bulls games. So.
Oh.
So Naomi, we're not able to hear you. Do you want to double check to make sure you're not on mute? And if you're unmuted, then you might want to just check your volume. Sometimes that's the case. And it looks like you're looking at someone that's in your vicinity. So while you're, you got it?
My name is Naomi Anderson, and my dad is in the Navy right now. And I've moved to 4 different places and in 7 houses. And I think my favorite place was Hawaii because it was really warm there and there was beaches. And we also saw big turtles, which was fun.
That does sound like a lot of fun. Thank you, everyone. And then I'll go last. Erica Bauer, Air Force. We moved. Naomi, I'm glad you pointed out the housing thing because that constitutes a move. It changes your context, and it is a unique reality or experience to many of the civilian folks in our lives. And so for me, it was 5 moves, but 2 of those were houses within the same city, but very different locations. And then the favorite place I was stationed was Charleston, South Carolina. And so with that being said, Naomi, thank you for addressing the volume thing. And I just want to say, we've been doing this pandemic thing long enough to know that tech things happen. And sometimes we are the cause of it. For example, last night I was on a board meeting, and I don't know the last time I did this, but I was unmuted, not once, but twice. Now, luckily for everybody listening, I didn't say anything inappropriate. I was getting my son's critiques on the meal I had cooked. So to make sure you, but I couldn't believe it. I was getting these messages, you're not muted. So yeah, in just 1 second, speaking to my son, hey honey, I need you to actually leave this space. Remember, I'm doing this panel. Thank you. And so without further ado, we're gonna play a little game. And then after the game, I'm gonna go to specific, each of you specifically to talk about the experience and how the experience of being a military child is shaping you and has shaped you, right? So that'll be specific to each of you. I'm letting you know now so you can have that percolating. But I wanna start with what I like to call decoding the lingo. What I find is when we get together, we immediately start talking in lingo. Chuck Swirsky one of the Bulls announcers, I was doing an interview with him, and then afterwards, we both learned that we were military brats, and we immediately started talking the lingo. And so what I want you to do is I'm going to say a word, and the first person who it resonates with, just tell us what comes to mind or what does it mean, right? And this is going to be familiar to those of us who are in the life and not so familiar to others. So doesn't matter who answers, but just get ready to unmute. First word, shopette. Shopette. Okay, so for me, shopette growing up, you got it, Jason?
Yeah, it was shopette was groceries, like a store, right? Convenience store.
Yeah, like similar to what we have for gas stations.
Exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm.
That's Air Force, I think, Erica. So that's why.
Oh, see, good. That's another thing that people were like, yes, Air Force. They're good to know. I didn't know that. Here's another one. BX/PX.
That's the post exchange.
Yes, what do you do there?
Post exchange or base
All right.
exchange, but post exchange. Yeah.
Let's see if this resonates with anyone. Thompson Blue.
That's the uniform. That's Air Force uniform, right? Isn't that uniforms?
So Thompson Blue is and I believe this is for every branch, but now you're making me think, Jason, if I'm doing too many Air Force specific ones, which is not good for me to know. Thompson Blue is this traveling musical group that would go around to different bases. Did you all ever see Thompson Blue?
That might be, Erica, that could be a generational and Air Force.
Yeah. Man, so this game may not work out, y'all. All right. Which would work for me if I was giving out prizes, because then I would win. In fact, I've been keeping score, and whoever has the most points gets front row tickets to the championship, right? Because I'm winning, obviously. Okay, here's one. I'm scared now. Okay. Does TDY resonate?
Well, that's the pay. TDY, that was the pay that you got for a temporary duty.
Okay. There we go. So that just gives you a sense for many of you, and for some of you on the panel, my bad. I should have practiced with Kelsey first.
What about PCS?
Yes. Okay, Kelsey, you saw where I was going with that. Go ahead.
Who knows what PCS is?
PCS brought tears to my eyes because that means you were moving.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later today. And so there's a lot of different things that are specific to living on military bases, right? The one thing I think is interesting for a lot of people to know is the military base was designed not just to house us, but it was designed in a way that if they were to close down, we on the base had everything we needed. You can go to the hospital, right? We had a hospital, you can get your hair cut, right? Anything you needed, you can go to the NCO club or the Oak Club, for those of you who are familiar, where we go to eat. And so anything you needed would be on the base. And, for some of you may be familiar with bagging groceries at the commissary, wherever you get groceries at. And so these are very unique to how we grew up, but important for others to understand because it's very different for how many others, civilians specifically, grow up. So now I want to get to the nitty gritty, all right, in terms of how the experience of growing up has shaped you. And I'm going to ask in terms of very specific ways. And I'm going to start with Logan. Okay, so Logan, you're currently in high school. I was a little shocked to hear that you've moved 9 times. And how old are you?
I'm 18, just turned 18.
So just let everyone sit with that. He's 18 and he's moved 9 times. And for those of us on this panel, it may not be our experience, but it's not going to be a new reality, right? For those of us in the audience who haven't had that type of experience, sometimes corporate folks do, think about that. Think about in that lifespan, the things that happened throughout your life, right? And so Logan, talk to us a little bit about how that experience has to date impacted you.
I think the amount of times I moved With the constant changing of friends and people you get in contact with, it's made me a more outgoing person. As for someone who is homeschooled, you'd normally be not as social, but because I move so much and you can make friends so quickly, it's become a strength of mine.
Excellent. Thank you, Logan. Now I want to kick it over to Shelly. What I love about what Kelsey's done is we do span a multitude of generations. And so you think throughout the lifespan and the history of the military, right? Different things are going to mean different conflicts are going to have different meanings, different periods of time and context have different meanings. And so, Shelly, talk to us a little bit about how the experience shaped you, specifically as it relates to your work with the airlines and as a parent.
I think, first of all, being exposed to different cultures, different countries, opened a whole world to a lot of different things that allowed me to grow as a person and be more accepting in a way that when I did start working for the airlines, it was very easy for me to interact with different people from all over the world and even understand their body language when they were trying to communicate and language wasn't the same. Growing up and moving, and mostly my dad was in the Orient. He never was stationed in Europe. And living in that atmosphere, I feel like part of that world was my world. And you start to gravitate toward that and you learn from their cultures. You know, I think us as Americans, we kind of have the feeling that we are superior or we have it all together for the world. And yet there's so many different countries and cultures that can help us learn and grow as people. And it's just a very wonderful thing. And appreciate American soil. I always say everyone should live in a third world country and see what you have to appreciate in America.
Thanks, Shelly. Excellent. I will say growing up, a unique thing was being surrounded by people from all over the world or spending time in other countries and how that shaped our experiences. Naomi, you've described your job right now as reading books, right? But more than that, I also assume that you are in school and just kind of getting onto your own journey in life. Can you share with us how growing up in the military is shaping who you are? And I think, Naomi, you want to check your volume again here, just to make sure we can hear you.
I think it is fun to move, but also sad because I'm moving away from friends. But it's also exciting that we get to go to new places and see different things. It has also helped me be a little more braver to meet new friends because I've done this so much.
Great point. And so what are you looking forward to in your upcoming move to California? And tell us a little bit about this bus.
So we were going to live in a bus, like convert it into an RV, but we aren't gonna live in a bus anymore because I guess the engine broke down or something. So we're gonna do it later. But I'm excited to go to beaches again and a warmer climate, I guess.
Thanks for rubbing in, Naomi. I won't be asking you for how time. No, I'm just kidding. I'm excited for you. Those of us who've been to California, we know exactly what you're talking about, as that is very different for those of us looking into the Illinois skies today. But we're excited for you as well. California is lovely. And then finally, Jason, you lived in England, but I know you're a professional athlete, and I was no professional, but I was a college athlete. And one of the things that resonated with thinking through how being in the military may have shaped you is part, how's it impacted you as an athlete? And then part, how's it impacted you as an entrepreneur? Because I know now that you're retired from the NFL, you're an entrepreneur. And if you have anything relevant to this, Jason, I was also thinking about the stress I felt thinking I was going to play college soccer. And then we got orders to move midway through high school. And so then not only did I change regions, change schools, the sports seasons changed. And so I was fortunate enough to excel in track, which I'd never run prior to high school, and went to college doing that. And I actually was much better at track. It was never going to get a scholarship to run or play soccer, unbeknownst to me at the time. But could you share with us how you've been impacted by the moves, given the fact that you played in an American professional league, you were living in Europe, and then now you're an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it was different. Playing football, I can recall we moved to England. I was in 4th grade, so we were there for 3 years. So 4th to 7th grade, and I can recall getting there, and everybody's like, before we moved, everybody's like, oh, football's big in England. So I'm all excited, and as a 4th grade, you don't understand. There's a little difference in British football than American football. So so we get to England and we get on the base, and there's no football team because British football is soccer. And I'm extremely mad, resenting my dad at the same time, because I feel like it's his fault, not knowing that it's his job. So I didn't have the opportunity to play American football for 3 years while I was there. And being overseas, as many of you know, even watching football games and college football games that come on later, you get them like a day or two later. So, it's a past event as opposed to watching it live. So it was a real hard adjustment for me. The good thing is I had a lot of good friends on that base, and, we ended up making our own football league. So we didn't miss out on that much. How it prepared me for life and playing professional sports, and even college, it prepared me because I can remember in college, us taking our first away game flight. And a lot of my teammates in college had never been on an airplane before. And I'm looking at them like they're crazy, because I'm like, man, well, I was on an airplane, every 3 years. So it was, it helped me adapt a lot, even playing professionally, because, you go to different cities, different environment, different teammates, different surroundings. So it really helped prepare me to be able to adapt and make that transition pretty easily.
Excellent. And what about with you today as an entrepreneur? And feel free to say the work you're in. I believe it's maybe a sports facility.
Yeah, I own a training facility. I'm also a high school football coach, and it just prepared me to, like I said, just be confident. Growing up in a military family, as we know, my dad was real militant. So, as we all know, I was raised differently. A lot of kids got different things for Christmas. I tell everybody I got combat boots for Christmas, because my dad would say, hey, well, those combat boots are for you for 5 o'clock in the morning when you got to get up and cut the grass. So it was real demanding, and I didn't understand it at that time. But what he was doing is preparing me to be successful in life. So, having, those same values that the military shares, and having those values instilled in me at a young age, helped prepare me to be successful in life, and especially as an entrepreneur. It's a lot of demand. It's your own business, but being raised in a military family and having those core values instilled in me helped me, be successful beyond my playing days.
Thank you for that. And now one of the things that each of you wrote about, and Logan spoke to this specifically, so I want to start with you, Logan. And I think, Logan, your experience is a little bit different. I'm so glad you found the charger, is because you're homeschooled, but you did talk about the balance about being a military child, helping you to make friends quickly. And I think a number of us touched on, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, right? One of the challenges, or one of the things that can be hardest about moving, as Naomi said, is Naomi's homeschooled as well. Thank you for that, Kelsey. It's funny because I feel like I'm getting like the script. So I see it and I'm like trying to incorporate it like I'm a professional. But it's very helpful. Thank you. But one of the things is relationship building, right? I know for me, moving around, I think people describe me as a chameleon, right? I too can relate to people really well. And to Shelley's point, I can read people a little bit differently because I've been exposed to so much difference, and specifically difference from myself, which I think could be beneficial for our country in many ways. And so I wanna hear from you, Logan. What do you mean when you say you're able to make friends quickly? I think we can relate to the sadness of loss, right? And losing people. What do you mean that you're able to really, you're talking about that resilience you developed? Can you speak about that?
Yeah, now the sadness necessarily won't change all that much because losing people you've been close with will continue to hurt. But after moving, it made the initial getting yourself out there process easier. So my mom specifically, we were homeschooled, so she made sure we did things to get out of the house and meet new people because we didn't have that interaction with I would say real, but public schools. And homeschooling definitely was easier for all the moving, but we had to find something to compensate. So that's why I did stuff like play soccer and all these extracurricular activities. And that's partly why we found Kids Rank. And yes. So it makes the getting yourself out there process a little bit quicker because you get used to it.
Got it. Thank you. And what are some things, Naomi, as you prepare to leave to California and thinking about saying goodbye to your friends, what are some things that that you think are going to be helpful to you as you say goodbye and transition to California?
I think that video calls,
I think that's great, video calls. You know, I was just thinking it might be too close to the actual time of moving, but I was thinking specifically around how technology has changed in terms of allowing us to remain connected, which maybe wasn't available previously. So thank you for sharing that, Naomi. Another topic I want to talk about is deployment. I want to start with Shelley, but I want to, and Shelley, you'll have to help me. I don't remember if your dad was deployed or if it was based on where you all were stationed, but you did talk about this coming back or transitioning back. But deployment may or may not relate to all of us, because I think though we span generations, unfortunately, our lives may have interacted with different conflicts. And it's on the mind because Biden recently announced that he would be bringing troops home from Afghanistan. And for, I think, the civilian world, you hear that news in a very different way than for military folks, right? And in fact, I used to, in my former life, I was a postdoctoral fellow at the Heinz and Jesse Brown VA. And even the way we refer to these, like I'm thinking, oh, Afghanistan, Operation Enduring Freedom, right? There are specific names given to these conflicts. And so I just want us to think about what does deployment mean, or what are your experiences? Share what your experiences have been with deployment, because I think it's something, thank you, Kelsey. I think that's something that people may not understand. And part of it may be due to conflicts we're having internationally. Part of it may just be due to the fact that your loved one or your parent is being asked to go live someplace else. For instance, my dad had to go to Korea for a year, and we were separated for that entire year during my freshman year of high school. So that separation, I guess, is more what I'm interested in. But I think with Shelley's experience, I would love you, Shelley, to kick us off here.
Well, we were fortunate to accompany my dad in his assignments, except going to Taiwan, he preceded us by 6 months. And we were unsure if we could be there to accompany because the Chinese government wasn't allowing families to come later unless you were traveling with them. And there's a lot of red tape that I could go into, but not right now. And then we lived in Taiwan for 3.5 years. But the last year and a half, my dad was in Vietnam. So my mom and I were allowed, we were the first American family that was allowed to stay unaccompanied in Taiwan through the Chinese government. So my dad was in Vietnam, but talking about video calls and everything, communication was almost non-existent. We had to go to CCK, which was the Chinese Air Force base right by us. And twice we got to talk to him through the ham radio, which went all the way around the world and back. And then he was able to get R&R being in Vietnam for 12 hours out of 15 months. He flew back to Taiwan for 12 hours. And that was his R&R that whole time. So yeah, it just him being separated from us and worried, you know, as a kid, sometimes you almost shut down because you know there's a war going on and it's right there. You know, it wasn't too many miles away. And I remember him saying to my mom at the airport, and we were standing there in Taipei, and he said, if I come back in a pine box, you know what to do. I'm an only child and I was a daddy's girl. So that was tough. But I think our faith in God really helped us through it. It was tough being on foreign soil too, because we had to move off the military base while he was in Vietnam and move on to a Chinese compound. So that was very different. So yes, it is tough with deployment.
Thanks, Shelley. Can anyone else relate to the concept of deployment and really kind of that separation from your loved one? Well, in some way, I think the silence might.
I'm gonna call it Logan.
Okay.
Because
You tried to stay out of it.
Because deployment is different for Navy in some cases because they're used to a cycle.
Yeah, my dad's been in a few, I think about 3 deployments. I probably can't remember all of them. But one thing, before I talk about it too much, one thing important that I remembered is that he never, a year seems like a long time, but he never had the really, really long deployments of like 18 plus months. So that was one thing that was like, yeah, a year is a lot. And whenever I tell anybody about it, they're like, that's crazy. Like, that's a whole year. But you also got to think about other people are getting deployed for 18 months and up, and you don't know. And like the location too. My dad was mostly stationed in Bahrain whenever he went for deployment. So it's not middle of war. Like, I don't know how I didn't get into all that. I was still little at the time, but.
Oh, Logan, I love that you're bringing this up. Thanks, Kelsey. Thanks, Morel. So yes, deployment doesn't always mean for conflict. You can go for different spots of time to different locations. So my brother, my older brother actually was in the reserves. And so he was deployed to Qatar, right? And so it's important to realize that there are different ways to serve the military. There are different branches, and there are different jobs within the military that cause you to travel for different reasons, right? So my brother was in Italy. He was in Qatar for months at a time while his fiance was here in the States, right? So that's one way. So you're absolutely right, Logan. And I think what's crucial about that for civilians to understand is being separated from your loved ones for any of those reasons is very normal, You may know someone who travels for their job, their consultant, right? Or if they have businesses in multiple locations, but that might be unique within their sphere or their social networks. Within the community, the military community, that separation is very common. And it's just something that we deal with, but we don't necessarily have space to talk about. Even my dad was a courier for a little bit, and it was very common for him to leave for a couple of weeks. He'd be in Antigua, or he'd be in an undisclosed location, or he'd fly to different locations within a day and be home by dinner. And we never talk about it, right? And so with that, I want us to, we know that this experience is unique. Outside of Kids Rank, Kelsey's work has made me realize that we never talked about it. We kind of just accepted it. So I want to hear from you all. Have you ever had space to just reflect and talk about the fact that yes, there's conflicts that are dangerous, but just traveling and not knowing what your parent is doing, where they are, especially Logan being a young age, you may not have full understanding. Are there spaces where you feel that you can talk about this and it's understood? And if not, what do you do with these experiences outside of something like a panel like this? And I'm going to start with Jason.
I mean, when I was, we didn't have an organization like Kids Rank. It was, it was like, we had the preteen center, or like the, the community center in which, your kids could go to, similar to what a rec center is now. And so we didn't really have a space to kind of talk through with each other what our particular parents were going through. So a lot of that, you kind of, I know my mom would try to tell me and my sister, hey, your dad's going to be gone for 6 months. Then, prayerfully he'll be back, things like that. And as a kid, you don't really put in perspective about, what they're going to be doing, the danger of the job, or you don't put that in perspective. You're just like, oh, dad's gone for 6 months. It's just me, my mom, my sister. So, I think with Kids Rank, evolving now, I think it's a huge asset for military kids and dependents, because it gives them a space to be around, military kids who are going through the same thing that they're going through, that they can relate to, but also gives them resources to get through things that they may not understand. So, when I was growing up, I wish we had Kids Rank, and that's why, I'm always going to be, involved in helping out with Kids Rank, because I feel strongly about it being a resource for military kids.
Anyone else want to jump in? I won't put you on the spot, but don't force me.
I will say, as a child, my dad would be gone on missions, and they were secret missions, and I didn't know the dangers of them, and until he came back or something, and he would be gone and couldn't tell my mom even where he was going. And so I would feel scared, but I had no one, it was just part of life. You just dealt with it. But I think being overseas with foreigners, and we were involved a lot in the mission field with different missionaries from all over the world, it was easier for them to relate to us than coming back to America and not be accepted, especially when they found out my dad had been in Vietnam. You were very chastised and very shunned, and couldn't talk about it. So Kids Rank is a wonderful thing, for kids to have that same camaraderie and just acknowledge each other.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Shelley, because if you're not in this context, if you haven't grown up in this context, you can forget that there are families attached to our servicemen and women. Take out the factor, which is a very relevant factor, that once you are in, you are taking, or you're receiving directives, right? It's not like they're asking us to vote on where we'd like to go next. It's not like we're consulted ahead of a base closure before we're all dispersed. And a base closure is simply the government determines that a specific base is no longer needed, so they're going to close it. In between the announcement and the closure, everybody who lives there and calls that place home receives an assignment elsewhere. So not only are you saying goodbye to your friends, it's one thing when you say goodbye to your friends and you know that they're all in a shared location, It's a whole different thing. And this happens with military kids across the spectrum, is when there is no going back, right? There is no home base because there's a high likelihood that the friends you left will also be leaving. And so, to Shelley's point, when there are unpopular decisions, and I say unpopular based on media sentiment, our global social political context, because the Vietnam wasn't the last time, and it will continually not be the last time, and not necessarily the first time, right? But when there is unpopular sentiment, a lot of times what happens in the media, people aren't necessarily thinking about how it's impacting not only the service individual, men and women, but also the children and the partners, spouses, right? We're all carrying that. And what we signed up for was to serve the country. We didn't sign up for all the particulars and all the decisions that are made, and you have no way of predicting what you might be called to do, right? But you did say, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to entrust my life in the future of my family for these set amount of years to this lifestyle. And there's a number of reasons for that. And so I think the story, and this is relevant on a number of fronts because you don't know the story. Another story we don't know, and all of you may not know it. So if you don't know the answer to this next question, you may want to ask after we're done, is why did your father join the military? My dad joined the military. He was one of 10 in a poor rural community, and it was going to be his only way out. My dad didn't go to college until the 40s after the old GI Bill, because he retired after 24 years of service. But college wasn't an option. Getting a good paying job wasn't an option. The military was his way out. And to this day, he's still the only one of his 10 brothers and sisters who ever traveled outside of Pennsylvania, outside of the country. So with that being said, why did your parent, because some people, we assume it's for some deep rooted patriotic reason. For some, yes, but for others, there's a range. And so why did your father join? Naomi, let's start with you. I don't know who, Shelley, were you ready?
Sure.
Yeah, Shelley, we'll go Shelley, Naomi, Logan, Jason.
Well, I know my dad entered, he went to college. He was able to go to college and entered in, but I think he wanted to better himself and see the world and serve his country. He did end up in Korea, first assignment. I think he was always very proud to do that. And he could have taken over his dad's grocery business. My grandfather had a grocery store, but in a small town in Oklahoma. But he decided that he wanted to see the world and serve his country. And so he went to college and then entered in. So that's his story.
Okay, Naomi, you ready? I gave you a little bit of time in case you needed to, phone a friend.
I don't actually know why my dad went into the Navy.
So that'll be your homework. Maybe it's an assignment that Kelsey can incorporate into kids' rank. Why, Dad? Why are we doing this? Because it's important for us to have a why sometimes. All right, Logan.
Okay. So it's kind of weird talking about my parents' story coming from me because I've never done anything like this. But I think it was a few reasons, honestly. I've been told bits and pieces, never specifically though. So I don't think my dad was really looking into further education as it wasn't his first choice, you could say. We've had a lot of military family, parents, grandparents, uncles. So he had role models in that way. Also, my parents married very early. So it was another thing of make a decision for financials and, you know, I think those would be the main reasons.
Excellent.
And seeing places and moving around would sound like a bonus.
Absolutely. And Logan, get used to telling your parents' story. As you get older, you will have more opportunities to share your parents' story. And eventually that's the only story that matters, right, Mom? Right, Dad? So kidding. It is nice now. I get to talk about my parents' stories. They have no idea how I made sense of their lives. I'd like to keep it that way, everybody. So I know this is live, but please, Eric Prigg, let's keep him out of it. So Logan, I'm glad you said that because it's important to understand there's a range of reasons. And so getting married early and trying to figure out what is the best next step to support my family, excellent. That's very common. So we can talk offline about how early did they get started. And finally, Jason.
Yeah, Erica, my story is similar to yours. My dad's one of 11, and they, grew up a small house, so everybody's real close. My dad always tells me he shared a bedroom with his brother, and it was the closet. So, so he was real close with his siblings, but he wanted to be able to provide for his family, also give us an opportunity to see different things. And another reason was he said he wanted to get away from his family for a little bit. So he said he wanted to make sure that, if his family wanted to see us, they'd have to either, take a plane or let them know. They couldn't just, walk across the street and knock on the door. So that was his main reasons for joining the service.
I love it. I love it. See, Logan, see? And it brings to mind another thing. I don't know why this came to my mind, Jason, but I mean, you're going to be like, I don't know why either. But in terms of how our parents, right? How the spouse, how the partner joins the military. For my family, because they're not here, so I can tell the story. My mom found out she was pregnant with me before my parents got married, and my dad just got orders to Japan. And so my dad said, honey, will you wait for me? And she said, absolutely not. And he goes, I mean, will you marry me? And so within months of my being born, my mom and dad got married. My mom always jokes, you were at the wedding. Y'all, it took me years. I think I was in my 30s and I was like, happy 34th anniversary. And then they're like, happy 34th birthday. Months after the anniversary, and I never had. And so finally they had to break it all the way down for me. That's American education for you right there. But that is how we ended up being a military family. My mom could have said no, or we'll wait. And I would have stayed right there at Phoenix, Arizona after being born at Williams Air Force Base, but got married and we received our first deployment. So my mom learned overnight, and she also grew up poor, one of 8. So this was a whole new, her sisters and brothers were like, I'm sorry, you're moving to Japan. And no, they had no visitors, right? So yeah, there are all different ways that we ended up here on this panel today. And so I would like to now, thank you. I would like now for the audience to be thinking about any questions they have. Kelsey Morale, I'm gonna delegate you to tell me, I guess I should ask you now, am I getting questions from the chat?
Oh wait, let me come on. I do have questions. Yes.
You have the questions?
I mean, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So I want to know, and this is always my question, for the adults that are military kids, how do you refer to yourself? Are you a former military child? Are you no longer military? Like, how do you feel and would express that? And for my kids that are still military kids, do you think that you will outgrow being military kids, or will you, like, when you're 80, you're going to be like, I'm a military kid?
I'll jump in and say,
I think we lost Jason for a second.
Go ahead,
it's in my DNA. I will always be a it if DNA can change, then yeah, you're born into a military family and you just always are. That's just part of your life, part of your being.
I agree with Shelley. And it comes up in tandem with this question, Kelsey. Where are you from? And Shelley, where do you say you're from?
Well, I was born in upstate New York, but I told the story real fast the other day. When we moved to Hawaii, a Japanese man that lived next door to us said, "Where are you from?" And I said, I couldn't say New York. I said, Unork, California, because I remembered leaving California. And that's where I thought I was. I was born at Griffiths Air Force Base, even though my dad was Army. That was, he was stationed where there wasn't another hospital, but that's where I thought I was. And I have yet to be back to upstate New York to see. He always promised me, but then he passed away. Someday I'm going to get back there, even though it's changed. Yeah, but so you're from New York to California. That's where I was from, you know, and you don't have a hometown.
Yep. Yeah, it's the worst question you can ask a military dependent. But same with me. I say I was a military kid. I moved around. Military brat. I saw someone, Hughes, put that in the yes, we are military brats, but military brat is one of those, it has an actual meaning. It's not because we're brats, like the way that we normally say brat. I just want to clarify that for y'all. Because sometimes people say, oh, you're a military brat, and the way they say brat, you know, can be a fighting word. So Jason, you're the other adult, and then Kelsey wanted to hear specifics from Logan and Naomi.
Yeah, I mean, like Shelley was saying, it's something that's always going to be in your DNA. It's an identifier, something else that identifies you. I feel it's always a plus because, you know, anytime I've been around people and you tell them your father served in the military, well, then they already know, you know, what your character is like. They already know what you're built of because they know that, you know, you having those experiences growing up military, that you have those values, you know, that your father had to follow, and they know that it was passed down to you. So, you know, me being in a space where I was around different coaches and different organizations, where we're always being evaluated on a constant basis, they already knew what type of person I was based upon my upbringing with my father being in the military.
And then Logan and Naomi, share with us about, do you think this will be something that's forever with you? And then if you could talk a little bit about Kids Rank specifically. That's why we're here today. And what has it meant for you? Because I think that too is a part of your military identity that we necessarily haven't been privy to.
So I definitely think I'll always consider myself a military child, simply because like the character building that was put into being a military kid, like it will still affect my later decisions. So like I'll probably not want to move a whole lot once I get older because I've done it so much, and like I'll be pretty good at it, but there's that. Also, call me military brat all you want. I'll take it as a compliment. We always, that's like, yeah, that was the thing. And then Kids Rank, I talked a little bit about before, was always a safer place for me, as with like, because we talked about not having a whole lot of people to talk to when it came to deployment and like problems only military families deal with. And Kids Rank was a place for me to talk about that kind of stuff and hear other stories and like talk about, like we could talk about our parents and the cool things they did with each other and be like, yeah, my parent did this. And so it was conversation, fun place. Also, we talked about like the youth centers and stuff were brought up. And I didn't know that was only a military thing until after I didn't go to those anymore. I played soccer through military, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of military kids out. But no, that was a thing. So that was cool.
I love it. I didn't know either, but youth center was every day after school. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And Naomi?
I think Kids Rank also helped me meet new friends because there was other kids that experienced what I experienced. And yeah, so I can talk to them about it, like how I feel, and like stuff like that. And yeah.
Excellent. A little bit more about Kids Rank, and then I want to end on Moki's fantastic question. And Moki, let me just give you a shout out. I apologize for saying your name incorrectly, but your nonverbals, oh, thank you. Your nonverbals throughout have been a go-to for me. You're completely engaged, so thank you for staying engaged. So I want you all to think, I'm going to give you time to think of the one word, but Moki's question is fantastic. One word for how you feel about being a military kid. And if someone says your word, you got to pick a new word. So be thinking about that while I say a few things. So after working at the VA, I worked in education for Chicago Public Schools for almost 10 years around equity, right? That's creating inclusive environments because the science is clear that how we are inside predicts how well we'll do academically. And let me tell you one group that's never brought up, us. So I hope those of you that are listening understand that the importance of and the relevance of our experiences and the importance of what Kids Rank is bringing to the table is immensely powerful, not for our own emotional health and well-being, which is why we as adults are so excited for the work that Kelsey and co are doing, but the implications for feeling like you're not alone, for feeling like you have a community, for being grounded and having belonging. Science is clear. Those things precede and predict our ability to thrive. And so the work of Kids Rank is not just great for those of us who are in the military, it's great for our society. Because the sooner we are grounded, the sooner we're able to launch and lift off and go out and become who we were made to be, with these experiences being important factors to that. So please know today our stories are relevant, not just for us and others like us, but for everybody on this call and beyond. And so with that, your one word, we're going to start with you, Naomi, then we'll hit Naomi, Logan, Jason, Shelley, and then I'll kick it over to Kelsey.
My word is unique.
My word, I don't know if we're supposed to explain them, but mine's grateful.
Yeah, mine is blessed.
And mine is fortunate.
And mine is resilient. Kelsey.
This has been one of my favorite sessions. This has been amazing. I love hearing all of your stories, and really, as I've said on all of them, this is the beginning of a conversation. And I feel like there's so much more that we need to explore and talk about and hear from military kids, not just that are currently military kids, but from past generations, because they can share their insight on where there are further gaps that we might not even think about. And I love that all of those words that they just shared were positive, that it's been overall a positive experience, because I think that sometimes people might have this conception that military life is so hard on the kids and that, you should feel bad for them, or you should. And so they do face a lot of challenges where they need support, specific support, where they need, communities that gather around them. But overall, I think that the experience is a positive one. And just listening to this conversation, part of it now, in the changing of time, right? And so I think Shelley and Jason and Erica, lived on bases, when families lived more insulated on bases and had that. But, fast forward to now, 70% of families live in civilian communities. 80% of our kids go to civilian schools. So, it's a very different, community now, where we need our civilian friends more than ever to have basic understanding of military culture, because we are in the schools, we are in the communities. And so we need that partnership and that understanding so that we can, help our military children thrive, as Erica was saying. And so I just want to say thank you again to all of you for participating in today's discussion. I really, my wheels are turning in terms of, I would love to see something come out. We're going to do, it's in the works already. We're starting to plan for it, a deeper conversation around this to really help share out some of these stories for military children because it's very important. So thank you for joining us today. Happy Month of the Military Child and happy Purple Up Day. We are next month, we'll be talking in May, be talking about special needs with Partners in Promise, doing all things around because, you figure there are families that are challenged with, learning needs or medical needs and having to transition from community to community. You have to get new doctors or new education teams. And, that process can be very difficult for families to navigate. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. And I want to, again, thank all my guests today for joining us. They are amazing. And we'll be sharing some of their stories through our social media. So look out for that. And have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.